There's something interesting happening in the world today, and I think it's worth talking about. Everyone's got something to say. Everyone's announcing their next big move, their next big goal, their next big dream. Social media is full of it. People telling the world they're going to lose 50 pounds, write a book, start a business, transform their life. And here's what I've noticed after all these years. Most of them never do it. They announce it, they get their little dose of attention, their friends leave some encouraging comments, and then nothing. 6 months later, they're announcing the same goal all over again. Now, let me ask you something. When did we start believing that talking about doing something was the same as actually doing it? When did the announcement become more important than the accomplishment? I've been studying success and personal development for decades, and I can tell you this with absolute certainty. The people who achieve the most say the least while they're doing it. The real producers, the real achievers, they're too busy working to be talking about working. Let me tell you about a fellow I knew years ago. Sharp guy, lots of potential, always had big ideas. Every time I'd see him, he'd tell me about his latest plan. He was going to build this, create that, revolutionize something else. And he was convincing. I'll give him that. He could paint a picture with words that would make you believe he was destined for greatness. But here's the thing, that's all he ever did. Paint pictures with words. 20 years later, he's still painting those same pictures, still talking about what he's going to do someday. Meanwhile, another fellow I knew, quiet guy, never said much about his plans. Well, he just went out and did it. Built 3 successful businesses, became financially independent, created a life most people only dream about. The difference? One lived in the announcement, the other lived in the action. The truth is, we've created a culture where the performance of intention has replaced actual performance. People spend more time crafting the perfect social media post about their goals than they do actually working on those goals. They're more concerned with looking productive than being productive. And the tragedy is, they don't even realize they're doing it. They think they're taking action because they're talking about taking action. But talking isn't action. Talking is just noise. And there's already too much noise in the world. Here's what I want to suggest to you. And it might sound radical in today's world, but stay with me. What if you just disappeared? Not literally, of course. Not from your responsibilities, not from the people who count on you. But what if you disappeared from all the noise? What if you stopped announcing and started building? What if you took 6 months, just 6 months, and went completely silent about what you're working on? No posts, no updates, no telling people about your grand plans. Just you, your goals, and the work required to achieve them. I call it strategic disappearance, and it might be the most powerful decision you ever make. See, when you remove yourself from the constant need to update everyone on your progress, something magical happens. You actually make progress. Real progress. The kind of progress that changes your life. Because all that energy you were spending on managing your image, on crafting your message, on explaining yourself to people who probably weren't that interested anyway, all that energy gets redirected into the actual work. But there's something deeper happening here, something more profound than just productivity. When you go silent, when you stop seeking validation for every little step forward, you start building something that's been lost in our modern world, self-respect. Not self-esteem. Everyone talks about self-esteem. I'm talking about respect. Respect comes from keeping promises to yourself. It comes from doing what you said you'd do when nobody's watching. It comes from becoming the kind of person who follows through, not because someone's going to praise you for it, but because that's who you are. Let me paint this picture differently. Think about a farmer. I love farmer analogies because they understand something most people have forgotten. A farmer doesn't plant seeds and then dig them up every day to check on their progress. He doesn't announce to the whole town every time he waters his crops. He doesn't post pictures of his field every morning with motivational captions about growth. He just does the work. Day after day, in rain and shine, he does the quiet, consistent work that nobody sees. And then, come harvest time, the results speak for themselves. People drive by and say, look at that crop, that's a real farmer. The field does the talking, not the farmer. That's what we've lost. We've lost the understanding that results are what matter, not the narrative around the results. We've become so obsessed with documenting the journey that we forget to actually take the journey. We're so busy being seen doing the work that we never actually do enough work to matter. Now, I'm not saying don't share your success when you achieve it. I'm not saying hide your light under a basket forever. What I'm saying is there's a time for silence and a time for speaking, and most people have it backwards. They speak during the time for silence and then have nothing to say when it's time to speak because they haven't done anything worth talking about. The 6 months I'm suggesting, it's not about becoming a hermit. It's not about cutting off relationships or ignoring your family. It's about making a decision, a conscious, deliberate decision to prioritize doing over telling. It's about choosing to be someone who builds in private and reveals in public, rather than someone who reveals their plans and never builds anything at all. Here's what happens when you stop talking about what you're going to do. You remove the premature sense of accomplishment. There's research on this, but you don't need research. You know it from your own experience. Every time you tell someone about a goal, every time they say that's great or good for you, you get a little hit of satisfaction. Your brain registers it as if you've already accomplished something, and that takes away from your motivation to actually do it. It's like letting air out of your tires before a long trip. You haven't even started, and you've already depleted your drive. But when you keep it to yourself, when you carry that goal silently, it builds pressure, good pressure. The kind of pressure that turns coal into diamonds. That energy has nowhere to go except into action. You can't get satisfaction from people's approval, so you have to get it from actual progress. And that changes everything. The world is full of announcers. Be a builder instead. The world is full of people explaining what they're going to do. Be someone who just does it and lets the results do the explaining. Because at the end of 6 months, which would you rather have? A social media feed full of intentions or a life full of achievements? The choice is yours, but make no mistake, it is a choice. And it's one of the most important choices you'll ever make. So let's talk about what this actually looks like. Because I'm not interested in giving you theory without practice. Theory's nice, but it doesn't pay the bills and it doesn't change your life. Action does. Intelligent action. Sustained over time. That's what we're after here. The first thing you've got to do, and this is where most people stumble right out of the gate, is get absolutely clear on what you're building during these 6 months. Not 10 things. Not 5 things. One thing. One primary focus that's going to consume your energy and attention. See, here's the mistake people make. They think if they work on multiple goals at once, they'll achieve multiple results. Sounds logical, doesn't it? But it doesn't work that way. What actually happens is you spread yourself so thin that nothing gets the attention it deserves, and 6 months later, you've made marginal progress on several things instead of substantial progress on one thing. I learned this lesson the hard way. There was a time in my life when I thought I could do it all simultaneously. Build a business, write a book, get in the best shape of my life, learn a new language, all at once. I had this romantic notion that successful people were just better at juggling than everyone else. So I tried to juggle. And what happened? I dropped every single ball. The business struggled because I wasn't giving it full attention. The book never got past chapter 3. The fitness goal, well, let's just say the gym saw less of me than I'd planned. And that language, I can still barely order coffee in it. Then I watched a man who built an empire. He didn't do it by scattering his attention. He did it by focusing intensely on one thing until it was profitable, then one more thing, then another. Sequential, not simultaneous. And each thing he built got his complete attention during its season. That's the secret nobody wants to hear because it requires patience. And we live in a world that's forgotten how to be patient. So here's what you do. Sit down, and I mean really sit down. Not just think about it while you're driving or standing in line somewhere, and ask yourself, what's the one thing that if I accomplished it in the next 6 months would fundamentally change my life? Not superficially change it, fundamentally change it. Maybe it's building a skill that opens new career doors. Maybe it's creating a business that generates additional income. Maybe it's writing that book that's been inside you for years. Maybe it's transforming your health because you know that without health, nothing else matters. Whatever it is, it's got to be something that makes you uncomfortable, something that scares you a little bit, something that matters enough to sacrifice the comfort of mediocrity. And here's the test. This is important. Would you do it even if nobody ever knew? If there was no social media to post about it, no friends to impress, no validation to receive, would you still do it? Because if the answer is no, if you're only interested in it for the external recognition, then it's the wrong goal. The right goal is one that calls to something deeper in you, something that says, this is who I need to become, regardless of who's watching. Once you've got that clarity, and don't move forward until you do, then comes the part that separates the professionals from the amateurs. The daily disciplines. The boring, repetitive, unsexy work that nobody wants to talk about because it's not dramatic enough for a good story. But let me tell you something, success is built in the boring. It's built in the daily decisions that don't feel significant in the moment, but compound into something extraordinary over time. Think about what needs to happen every single day for you to reach that 6-month goal. If you're building a business, maybe it's spending 2 hours every morning before work on development. If you're writing a book, maybe it's 1,000 words a day, no exceptions. If you're transforming your health, maybe it's showing up at the gym at 5 in the morning every morning, whether you feel like it or not. Break it down into the smallest possible daily action, and then commit to it like your life depends on it. Because in a way, it does. Your future life, the life you want to be living, absolutely depends on what you do today. I've got a story about a farmer that I love, and it applies here perfectly. A young man once asked an old farmer, "How do you grow such incredible crops year after year?" The farmer said, "Son, I plant in spring, I tend in summer, I harvest in fall, and I rest in winter. Every year, same pattern." The secret isn't some magic trick. The secret is respecting the seasons and doing what needs to be done when it needs to be done. You can't plant in fall and expect a harvest. You can't neglect the crop in summer and hope it takes care of itself. You've got to work with the natural order of things. That's what these 6 months are, your season of planting and tending. This isn't harvest time yet. This is the time when nothing looks impressive, when there's no crop to show off, when people driving by your field might think nothing much is happening. But underneath that soil, everything's happening. Roots are growing deep, systems are developing, and preparation is being made for the abundance that's coming. But only if you don't dig up your seeds every day to check on them. Only if you trust the process and do the work. Here's what nobody tells you, though, and I want you to hear this clearly. There will be days, many days, when you'll question everything, when you're working in silence, without the encouragement of others, without the little dopamine hits of likes and comments. You're going to face doubt like you've never faced it before. You'll wonder if you're wasting your time. You'll wonder if anyone will care about what you're building. You'll wonder if you should just give up and go back to announcing plans instead of executing them, because at least that felt like something. I remember a period in my own life when I was developing a seminar that I believed in completely. I spent months on it, working late nights, refining the content, practicing the delivery. And during that time, I didn't talk about it. Not because I was trying to be mysterious, but because I knew that if I started talking about it, I'd lose the energy I needed to complete it. But there were nights, I'm being honest with you, when I sat there thinking, what if this is terrible? What if I'm completely off base? What if I pour all this time in and it amounts to nothing? That doubt is real, and it's loud, especially in the silence. But here's what I learned. Doubt is just part of the process. It's not a stop sign, it's a mile marker. It means you're in the territory where growth happens. Comfortable people don't doubt because they're not attempting anything worth doubting. They're safely inside their comfort zone where everything's predictable. But you've stepped outside that zone. So doubt's going to show up. Let it, acknowledge it, and then get back to work anyway. The key is understanding the difference between productive work and busy work. During these 6 months, you can't afford to confuse the two. Busy work is activity that makes you feel productive but doesn't move you forward. It's reorganizing your desk instead of writing. It's researching for the 100th time instead of implementing. It's tweaking your plan instead of executing it. Productive work, on the other hand, is the stuff that's hard, that requires focus, that you often want to avoid because it's uncomfortable. That's the work that counts. Every day, ask yourself, did I do the real work today, or did I just stay busy? Be ruthlessly honest with that answer, because 6 months goes by fast, faster than you think, and at the end of it, you're either going to have results or excuses. Results come from real work. Excuses come from busy work disguised as real work. And one more thing about these 6 months, protect them fiercely. Protect your time, protect your energy, protect your attention. People are going to want pieces of you. There will be invitations, distractions, emergencies that aren't really emergencies. You've got to learn to say no, and you've got to learn to say it without guilt. This isn't selfishness, this is self-respect. This is you honoring the commitment you made to yourself. Because if you don't honor it, nobody else will. The daily grind isn't glamorous. It won't make for exciting stories at parties, but it works. Consistency applied over time with focus and intention. That's the formula. It's worked for thousands of years, and it'll work for you, but only if you work it every single day, regardless of how you feel, regardless of whether you're seeing immediate results, regardless of whether anyone's cheering you on. That's what these 6 months demand. And that's exactly what they'll reward. Now, here's something most people miss entirely, and it's probably the most important part of this whole thing. When you commit to 6 months of focused, silent work, something happens that has nothing to do with the goal itself. Something deeper, something that lasts longer than any achievement. You change. Not just what you can do, but who you are. And that's the real prize. See, most people think success is about the destination. They think it's about the business you build, the weight you lose, the book you write, the skill you master. And sure, those things matter, but they're not the point. The point is who you have to become to achieve those things. Because here's the truth, you can lose the business, you can gain the weight back, you can write a book nobody reads. But who you became in the process of doing those things, that stays with you forever. That's equity you build in yourself that nobody can take away. Let me tell you about a period in my life that taught me this lesson. I was working on developing a new approach to teaching personal development, and it required me to spend about 8 months in intensive study and practice. I'm talking real study, not casual reading, but deep work. Books, notes, reflection, testing ideas, throwing out what didn't work, refining what did. During that time, I wasn't out speaking much, wasn't visible in the usual ways. Some people probably wondered what happened to me. But what happened during those 8 months was this: I became a different person. Not because I suddenly knew more information, though I did learn a lot, but because the discipline of showing up every day, of pushing through when I didn't feel like it, of being honest with myself about what was working and what wasn't, that process forged something in me. It built character. It built patience. It built the kind of confidence that doesn't come from other people telling you you're great, but from you knowing you can trust yourself to finish what you start. That's what these 6 months will do for you if you let them. They'll build your character. And character, my friend, is everything. Skills can be learned, knowledge can be acquired, but character is built through repeated decisions to do the right thing when nobody's watching. Character is built by keeping promises to yourself when it would be easier to break them. Character is built in the quiet moments when you choose discipline over comfort, progress over pleasure, becoming over belonging. Think about it this way. Every time you sit down to do the work when you don't feel like it, you're making a deposit in your character account. Every time you resist the urge to announce what you're doing and just keep working, you're making a deposit. Every time you push through doubt, through boredom, through frustration, and you keep going anyway, deposit. And those deposits compound. 6 months of deposits creates wealth in your character that will serve you for the rest of your life. This is why people who achieve one significant thing often go on to achieve many things. It's not because they're lucky or because that first success opened magical doors. It's because they developed the character required to see something through. They proved to themselves that they could do hard things. And once you prove that to yourself once, genuinely prove it through sustained effort over time, you carry that proof with you. You become the kind of person who finishes things, who builds things, who transforms things, and that identity is worth more than any single achievement. But let's talk about what you're actually doing during these 6 months beyond the specific work towards your goal. Because if you're smart, and I think you are, you're not just working on the goal itself, you're investing in yourself in every way possible. This is your time to become a student again, not in the formal sense necessarily, but in the real sense, the sense of being hungry for knowledge, for wisdom, for understanding. Read everything you can get your hands on related to what you're building. And I don't mean skim articles on your phone while you're waiting in line. I mean really read books. The long-form, deep-thinking kind that require you to sit down and concentrate. The kind that challenge your assumptions and expand your thinking. When I was younger, I made the mistake of thinking I was too busy to read, too busy building to bother with books. Then someone smarter than me said, "Jim, you can spend 5 years learning through trial and error, or you can spend 5 days learning from someone who already made those errors." That changed everything for me. Here's what I did after that conversation, and I recommend you do the same during your 6 months. I started spending at least 1 hour every day reading and studying. Not for entertainment. There's nothing wrong with entertainment, but that's not what we're talking about here. I'm talking about studying for growth, for insight, for wisdom. 1 hour a day is 7 hours a week. That's about 30 hours a month. Over 6 months, that's roughly 180 hours of focused learning. Do you understand what 180 hours of focused learning in one area will do for you? It'll put you in the top tier of knowledge in that field. It'll give you insights that most people will never have because they're too busy being entertained to be educated. And here's the beautiful part. When you're doing this in silence, when you're not posting about every book you read or every insight you have, the learning goes deeper. It becomes part of you instead of part of your image. There's a difference between learning something so you can tell people you know it and learning something so you can use it. The first is ego, the second is growth. During these 6 months, you're after growth, not ego. But let's be practical about measuring progress, because you can't just wander through 6 months hoping you're improving. You need to know. You need honest feedback. The problem is, when you're working in silence, you're not getting the external feedback you might be used to. And that's actually good, because external feedback is often misleading. People are polite. They encourage you even when you're off track. They like you, so they tell you what you want to hear, not necessarily what you need to hear. So you've got to become your own honest assessor. You've got to develop the ability to look at your work objectively and ask the hard questions. Is this actually good, or do I just want it to be good? Am I making real progress, or am I fooling myself? Am I taking the easy path or the right path? These questions require brutal honesty, and that's uncomfortable. But comfort is not what we're after here. We're after truth. We're after real growth, and real growth requires real honesty. Here's what I suggest. Keep a daily log, not a journal where you write about your feelings, though there's nothing wrong with that, but a log where you track specific metrics related to your goal. If you're building a business, track the actual work you did that day, not the busy work, the real work. How many calls did you make? How much did you create? What problems did you solve? If you're writing, track the word count. If you're learning a skill, track the practice time and what specifically you practiced. make it objective, make it measurable, make it honest. And then, once a week, review that log. Look for patterns. Are you actually progressing or are you stuck? Are you working on the right things or are you avoiding the hard stuff? Are your daily actions aligned with your 6-month goal or have you drifted? This weekly review is like a course correction. You're steering the ship and you need to check your heading regularly to make sure you're still pointed toward your destination. But here's what might surprise you. After a couple months of this kind of focused work, something interesting happens. You stop needing external validation. You stop checking to see if people are noticing. You stop caring about the likes, the comments, the approval. Not because you've become arrogant or disconnected, but because you've developed something more valuable. Self-respect based on genuine accomplishment. You know you're making progress because you can see it in your log. You can feel it in your increased capability. You can measure it in tangible ways. This is when you know the 6 months is working. When the internal satisfaction of real progress becomes more rewarding than the external performance of fake progress. When you'd rather spend another hour getting better than spend that hour telling people you're getting better. That shift, that's the transformation. That's the moment you stop being someone who needs constant validation and become someone who generates their own sense of worth through worthy action. And let me tell you, once you experience that, once you taste what it's like to respect yourself based on what you're actually doing rather than what people think you're doing, you'll never want to go back. You'll never want to return to the shallow satisfaction of announcement without achievement, because you'll have experienced the real thing. And the real thing is always better. So what happens when the 6 months are up? What happens when you've put in the work, built the thing, transformed yourself, and now it's time to step back into the world? Let me tell you, this is where it gets interesting. This is where you see the real power of letting your results do the talking. When you return after 6 months of focused work, people notice something different about you. They can't always put their finger on what it is, but they feel it. There's a quiet confidence that wasn't there before. There's a substance to you that can't be faked. And when they ask what you've been up to, when they wonder where you've been, you don't have to tell them a story. You just show them the results. I watched this happen with a young woman I was mentoring years ago. She came to me frustrated, stuck in a job she hated, talking about wanting to start her own graphic design business, but never making any real moves toward it. Just talking, always talking. So I challenged her. I said, stop talking about it for 6 months. Don't tell anyone what you're doing. Just build a portfolio, learn the business side, get your first few clients, and then we'll talk again. She looked at me like I was crazy, but she agreed. 6 months later, she came back. Didn't announce she was back, didn't post about her journey. She just quietly started showing up with work. Real work, a portfolio that was genuinely impressive, 3 paying clients, a business structure that actually made sense. And within weeks, people were coming to her asking about her services. They'd seen what she could do. They didn't need her to explain her vision or her passion or her journey. The work explained everything. That's the power of results. Here's what most people don't understand. When you announce your plans before you execute them, people form opinions about you based on potential, based on promises, based on words. But when you show up with results, with actual evidence of what you can do, people form opinions based on proof. And proof is infinitely more powerful than promises. Proof changes how people see you. More importantly, it changes how you see yourself. The respect that comes from demonstrated competence is different than any other kind of respect. It's earned, not given. It's solid, not fragile. Nobody can take it away from you because it's based on what you've actually done, not on what you said you'd do. And that kind of respect opens doors, real doors. Not the fake doors of social media connections and empty networking, but actual opportunities with people who want to work with someone who delivers. But here's the thing, and this is crucial, this can't be a one-time event. You can't disappear for 6 months, get some results, come back and announce them, and then go back to the old pattern of all talk and no action. This has to become who you are. This has to become your way of operating in the world. Do first, speak later. Build first, reveal later. Earn it first, claim it later. Make this your standard. When you have a new goal, a new project, a new direction, resist the urge to broadcast it. Just put your head down and work. Let people wonder what you're up to. Let them be surprised when you emerge with something substantial. Keep building your reputation as someone who delivers, not someone who promises. Because in a world full of people making noise, being someone who makes things is rare, and rare is valuable. The lifestyle of letting your results introduce you, it's not easy. It requires constant discipline. It requires you to swim against the current of a culture that wants you to perform constantly. But the rewards are extraordinary. You sleep better at night because you're not worried about maintaining an image. You have more energy because you're not wasting it on managing perceptions. You build real things because your time goes into building, not broadcasting. So here's my challenge to you, and I want you to take it seriously. Pick your 6 months, pick your goal, and disappear. Not from your responsibilities, not from the people who matter, but from the noise, from the performance, from the constant need to be seen. Go silent. Do the work. Become the person who achieves that goal. And then, when you're ready, let your results do the talking. Because at the end of your life, nobody's going to remember your announcements. They're going to remember what you built, what you created, what you became, and that's worth 6 months of silence. That's worth a lifetime of doing before declaring. That's worth everything. Now stop reading this and go do something about it. Your 6 months starts now.